And now on the line is Issy Petrie, and Issy is a Research and Policy Officer with the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. Issy, welcome back to NeuroFam.
Hi.
Okay, Issy, before we talk about what you and the SVP are calling for in Budget 2023, could you start off by telling me, as this is my first interview with you in a while, telling me how the cost of living crisis has really changed your work in SVP over the last year or two in terms of the families and the individuals you are helping?
Yep, so it's obviously been a difficult few years for people going in from the pandemic and the impacts of the pandemic on people into, I suppose, the cost of living crisis or this time of, really high inflation. And that's already been really impacting people this year. Primarily we're hearing a lot about energy bills, but people are also very much feeling the impact in their the food costs and how much, the weekly basket of food is coming to, in their transport costs. So these are, I suppose, pressures that are already being felt. And currently conferences would be really busy supporting parents with the cost of back to school. And, it's that time of year when there is that pressure on parents. So that's something that conferences are really seeing at the moment. So,
go on, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, so last year we would have received just over 190,000 requests for assistance. And, we've had a busy year, so we are expecting by the end of the year that to have increased.
Okay, I have a big interest in your work in SVP in relation to your calls on education, as I think we don't hear enough advocacy in this area in Ireland compared to some other areas. Over the last year or two, the cost of education in Ireland is really having a huge impact, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And, we would see an increase in calls for assistance over the summer, as parents start to, I guess, get those requests in and start to prepare for the year ahead. And that's, I suppose, hit harder this year because there is pressure on all fronts of people's budget. And when parents are faced with having to spend, up to hundreds of euros that they don't have, and particularly for households in poverty who on a very low income, that does mean cutting back in other areas. So it is a really difficult time for people.
I have a question for you about primary and second level education. I'll ask you that in a minute. But one thing I find an incredible, unbelievable story this year. But the cost for third level education, and I think it's particularly more acute with people who have to travel to third level. That's a huge issue. Accommodation, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things that we would be calling for in the upcoming budget is for an increase in the SUSI levels that are offered to people so that, everybody can afford to access their education. And also that SUSI grants are available to students to study part-time to allow people to, access education when they can, and that might be on a part-time basis, which is a really important, way of getting to education and, increasing our employment prospects and things like that.
Okay, I'm doing another interview this morning, Issy, with Stephen Moffat, the Bernardo's Ireland National Policy Manager, and I plan to talk to him also a lot about their policies in education. There has been progress on free school meals over the last couple of years, I believe, hasn't there, Issy?
Yeah, there has, and it has been an area where, we've seen good announcements from government in previous budgets, and it's really important making sure that children, have access to that free hot school meal during the day, and it's definitely something we need to see rolled out further, and, we would definitely like to see further commitments in the budget at the end of September, definitely.
I find it frustrating, and I am not even a parent, with how costly it is for parents to send their children to school. And I know that yourselves and organisations like Bernardo's call for there to be a policy of free school books every year. I've covered this issue for several years now in interviews. That's why I say I'm a bit frustrated. Could you tell me a bit more about this policy of yours, Issy, about free school books?
Yeah, so this is something that, you know, it comes up consistently, and it's just a cost that really we don't believe parents should be facing. So what we're calling for is for free school books to be, you know, rolled out nationally, and for there to be funding in place for that. And we think that's really important, where the government can reduce some of those costs that parents have to face, you know, every year.
And it wouldn't cost a huge amount of money in the grand scheme of things, wouldn't it?
Sorry, what was that?
It wouldn't cost the government a lot of money.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's a sort of, I guess, an investment that, you know, they can make that commitment year on year, and it would directly help families.
Okay, are we any closer to the policy of free school books coming in, or at least the extension of them to more students, do you think, Issy?
Well, I mean, hopefully, you know, in the budget at the end of the month, we will see that commitment. You know, as you just said there, it's a good use of money. It's a decision the government can make. So hopefully we will see that commitment.
Okay, Issy, to come towards the end of our interview, is there anything else you want to tell our listeners today on Near FM about your work for the upcoming budget? And can you tell me if you are optimistic in general that what you are calling for in the SVP will be adopted by the government?
Yeah, so I suppose this budget is a really important one for people. It's coming just ahead of winter. People will already have been facing higher prices this year, but people are worried about the winter ahead. So this budget is coming at a time where people really need to see that commitment from government, that supports are going to be targeted at people who need the most support, and where supports are going to have the most impact. So particularly in our key ask this year would be that social welfare levels are increased to allow people to keep up with that rising cost of living. We're calling for a €20 increase for adults and €12 for children. And this is the essential level we need to meet as a safety net this winter. And it's about supporting people so they're not having to restrict essentials like, you know, being able to afford the food bill, you know, being able to afford the energy, being able to afford to, you know, turn the cooker on and things like that. So this is the essential level we need to see this winter. And you know, there's a month to go, so I really do hope the government is going to respond to that real need out there.
Are you optimistic that your policies will be adopted?
I think there will be a commitment from government to assist people, and it's just about making sure that it's as targeted as possible, and that it's at a level that, you know, people need to see to see them through the winter.